You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me, as usual, Mr. Kevin Durso. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's been a week. We have a lot to get into. There's on ice news to talk about. There's off ice news to talk about. As before we dive into all of that, make sure you're following us on social media at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. Okay, so diving right into it, I think listen. We're gonna get distracted because we know what the big story is. But let's try to start talking about the games. Let's start with Tuesday night in Carolina.
Oh, you actually want to start with the games? Okay.
I do. I wanna start with the games. We'll talk about the one game Matvei Michkov played, and then we'll talk into why he didn't play anymore.
Yeah.
Tuesday night in Carolina.
Okay.
I think if you're one of the people who thinks the Flyers are a playoff team this year, that was an okay game because you look decent against one of the better teams in the East. You blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
If you're on the side that thinks the Flyers are/should be tanking, that's a great game for you because it's a nice, tight, competitive game. A couple of your young guys score, but you still lose in regulation, no points in the standings.
Okay. I'm going to counter your point slightly. You are right about the end result part. That is the perfect end result for, it's a competitive game. You're 4-4. You're into the final minute of the third period. You might get a point out of this game, and then you give up the goal in the final minute of regulation. An empty net or two, which is neither here nor there. But
yeah, the empty net is irrelevant.
Like, it might as well have been a 5-4 loss instead of 6-4. I get it. But it's the perfect result. You took it to the final 30 seconds. You give up a goal. You get no points, but you looked competitive, sort of. Because for yet another game, they managed 16 shots on goal, didn't have the puck a lot. Carolina is clearly better. And you got lucky that their goalie wasn't great. Like, two of those goals, Morgan Frost whiffs on one, but it hits his leg and still goes in anyway. The little deflection by Travis Konechny that makes it through the legs and also kind of just squeezes through to a degree. Like, it was a bad game from that perspective. Like, Carolina should not be allowed.
Was awful. Yeah, he did not
look awful enough. Like, right? Like, not the way I would look at it is not tested a lot, and then just situations where it's like, I don't know how that goes. Like I understand. Like, there's a way where I understand how a goalie does not stop the goal that Morgan Frost had in that game because
it's a weird funky misdirection.
Well, because it doesn't. It also doesn't come in on goal at like 70 miles per hour right from the side of the net. It comes in at 10.
It's enough.
The goalie, right? And the goalie is like, oh wait, it didn't go that way. Like, you're whipping your stick out probably to try to take that away and going as fast as you think it's going to happen, and then you're out of there because it didn't happen that fast. You know what I mean? Like, and he didn't even move like that, but you know what I'm saying. It's totally unique situation. Like, yeah, what's bad is the deflection goal by Konechny where it's like you're not even down. Like, it's a turn, and that one, it's not even on the goalie's fault. It's a bad turnover. Like,
absolutely,
it's a turnover, and then they make a quick play, and he's not even set because it should be getting out of there. But beside the point, like, I'm sorry, that just is not a competitive game at all, and it's like as competitive on the scoreboard, not competitive in the process at all.
Well, okay. So I think the most important thing that happened in that game, as far as the process goes, is that Owen Tippett scored because he scored on Tuesday. He scored on Thursday, correct?
Yes.
He had no less than 4 scoring chances on Saturday. From an offensive perspective, Owen Tippett got going this week. And a lot of that starts on Tuesday night. So, I mean, you can say what you want about the result,
he didn't
all of
score
that.
And he didn't score on Saturday, but he ended up with 7 shots on goal, which is more than norm. Exactly.
And at least 4 that were like real bona fide chances.
Oh, in Florida, the game was stolen.
Oh, yeah.
That was Sergei Bobrovsky reminding you not only, the history portion of this, which everybody talks about every time they play him, but also that's what if you're Alexei Kolosov, if you're Ivan Fedotov's on the older side, but you get the point. And if you're if you're Yegor Zavragin, who's just trying to get his footing at 19 in the KHL, that's what you're hoping those guys become. Like, Like, but that's how good he was. They very much had a chance to well, and that's the for the whole of the road trip. That's the good part, right? They
Absolutely.
didn't they didn't win a lot. So it's 1-1, 1-1-1. You get 3 points. It's not killer to like the standings position. You're out of last place. That part
Yeah,
we
which
took it
not
because
a bad thing as
because
far as
well,
morale
because
goes.
maybe we should mention also about the part where after they did lose to Carolina on Tuesday in regulation, didn't get anything for being in a 4-4 game and coming back several times, didn't get anything. They woke up the next morning in a tie for last place and theoretically
32nd in
by
the NHL.
by tiebreakers because they had more games played, were the last place team in the league.
Yep.
And
32nd in
and
the
and
NHL.
very much we're having like there was a portion of the other 2 games where it was shaping up to go exactly as we thought. I mean, they're trailing
Absolutely.
Tampa 1-0 for almost the whole game, like end of the first period, almost through the whole game, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, with under 5 to go, they find the tying goal. All
Oh,
right.
and you alluded to it there, but I did want to mention, obviously with Sam Ersson out, Alexei Kolosov did start on Tuesday and
Mhm.
also Thursday. Um,
No, he didn't play Thursday.
I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry. Uh,
He was
he
supposed
was
to.
scheduled to start, right? So
He was going to be.
Tuesday he started. He looked okay. He looked like he hadn't played a ton at the NHL level. He was still getting comfortable, but didn't look too bad as far as I'm concerned. Looks like a capable backup at this point in time. Obviously,
The good
still a
with
developing player.
Right. Look, the good with Kolosov was that he faced a lot of shot volume against a team that was on a winning streak, has been playing well. You can't deny that part of it. He faced a lot of shot volume. He made some really good saves in the process. The
Sure.
bad is that 5 goals against and it comes out to an 853 save percentage gets you nowhere.
Like that. No, it's
Like
pretty
it
bad.
just gets you nowhere. Like that's a game where I think I had even said at one point in time, if he plays a game and faces 30 shots and gives up 3, I'm thrilled.
Okay.
But you get into 34, but giving up 5, it's gonna kill that save percentage. You need that save percentage to be closer to 90 so that it feels a little bit better. Like when and maybe this is a good segue to Thursday because Ivan Fedotov gives you a game that you say, "That's what I could use as a backup. You give me that, we got a shot." Right?
Yeah. Let's transition to Thursday a little bit, and we're still gonna put off the big story because we're gonna talk about Fedotov first. Because quite frankly,
What a necessary game for him. Like
I think Ivan Fedotov changed a lot of minds about him. I think he slowed a lot of the hate that was coming his way. So situation. Shortly before the game, we get word that Alexei Kolosov, who was scheduled to start, will not be starting. Fedotov will be starting on short notice,
let me
and the
let me
Flyers are signed the debug.
let me rewind it back even further then.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Because and I don't I'm mentioning it and we're not going to have the discussion on it yet, but the first thing everybody finds out is that Michkov's not playing. He's part of the group that's getting scratched. Okay, no big deal. I do believe also as part of that practice or that morning skate or whatever you want to call it, Erson's skating, but not ready. Obviously, like they still weren't
Right,
bringing him
'cause
back.
he did join the team on the road trip.
Cam York's been skating.
Yep,
That's
we love
nice.
to see that. Yep.
But obviously, you're not coming back at full strength yet. You've got guys who are working their way back, but okay, no big deal. Michkov's not going to play. That was the big one. And Kolosov's the starter, which was to be expected. I kind of thought. I think they really want to see him. And then it couldn't have been 15 minutes after they announced all the lineup stuff, the goalie tonight, all that stuff, that it's Kolosov just left the morning skate and is talking to trainers. Oh no.
I believe the words from Charlie O'Connor on Twitter where he's trying it looks like he's trying to stretch something out in the tunnel.
Right. And regardless of what it is or whatever the case may be, it's all you
Sure,
needed
sure.
all you needed to see was leaving and talking to trainers, and it's like, "Oh, great." Because now Erson might be skating, but doesn't seem ready. What's the situation there? And they didn't really update it for a while. Like, now we're talking that you finally got that update about who the goalie was gonna be maybe an hour or so before the game.
I have a feeling Ivan Fedotov had a little more
No,
knowledge.
he did, but I'm saying for again, like you sat on that all day, like, well, maybe it wasn't anything. Maybe it was just a precautionary thing from the morning skate and he's fine. Maybe it's nothing, I don't know. Like that it's not that it bothers you in any way. Like I had to but from my perspective, I have to do a preview where I guess at that point well, not even I'm taking a guess. That was at least a good way to phrase it. Sometimes I am legitimately taking a guess. There's no morning skate, there's no pregame media. I have to take a guess on who I think is the starting goalie and try to get into John Tortorella's head for that one, which good luck doing that. This one, at least you're able to say it as, well, this is who they said is starting, but
they declared a starter.
Right, but he left the morning skate early, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. They haven't updated anything, so we'll see, right? So they find out about it. It was, I will say this, it was good timing for me to do a spot on 97.3 that night that we did know before then, so I could talk about how this was the guy who was starting. But nonetheless, it's like, I'm sure that the immediate thought, though, was, if we already thought that this was going to be a week that was, a potential 0-3 week, and it started no less with competitive game on the scoreboard to lose in the final minute of regulation.
That you lose in a bit of
what is this?
Bit of a heartbreaker when you lose with 30 seconds
left,
regardless of what you're
doing.
But
I'm sure the people went to, what is this going to look like with basically the third string guy playing?
What do you mean, people? The group chat.
Yeah.
We talked about. I believe the phrase was, I'm going to blow it up here a little bit. You can edit it out if you want. I'm so ready to write about a 6-1 loss where we already know what happens.
Well, sure, because day of, think about it. It's all of the news.
And I agree with you, because up to that point, Fedotov has looked atrocious. Tampa has kind of started to get the gears rolling a little bit. You're rolling in, and you're expecting them to blow your doors off.
Well, and do you know why I'm really going there? Honestly, it had less to do with whoever was in goal. It had less to do with Michkov not playing. It had to do with the fact that I brought up 4 games in a row. You're averaging 19 shots on goal per game. I don't care who your goalie is. Go ahead and bring back Marty Brodeur and let him play goal. I don't care. You're not going to win the game. You're going to probably get the doors blown off of you. If you you know why I felt that way too? It had nothing to do with even the shot totals as much. They got outpossessed like nobody's business against Carolina. If you have to spend 45, 50 minutes of a game defending, you're going to give up goals. And I wanted to know that night, taking Michkov out of the lineup and doing all the other things, who was going to provide any sort of offense. And it nearly went that way, because guess what part of it we got right? The one. They scored 1 goal in 65 minutes. That part was correct. Not to mention the part where the goalie at the other end is Andrei Vasilevsky, who, even though the numbers are not, they're not the elite Andrei Vasilevsky that was playing 3-4 years ago. I get that. But he looked it for enough of the game, did he not? Like the most shocking part of that game was they won in a shootout in 2 rounds.
Right. I don't remember the last time the Flyers went goal, save, and just got out of the shootout right away.
Do you know how many times? Do you know what's funny about it being in Tampa? Do you know how many times I've seen that exact scenario the other way when they've played Tampa? That they fight hard, they fight hard, they get it to a shootout, and then it's Tampa goes, yeah, you know what we're gonna do? We're throwing Stamkos and Kucherov out there to take the shots, and Vasilevsky's in goal. Have fun.
Good luck, Steve Mason.
Now, obviously, Stamkos is not a part. That's one of the things that was kind of like almost went under the radar for the game, because, and I'm not talking like Stamkos is obviously not part of the team, but Braden Point hasn't played for a few games, and I think that kind of flew under the radar a little bit, that their top center is out.
Yeah, at some point it's going to crumble in Tampa, and if Braden Point goes down for any significant period of time,
I get that, but like them. I kind of like Tampa. I kind of think is exactly where I figured they would be.
I mean, frankly, they're probably better off than I thought they'd be. If you had asked me 3 years ago.
I had them in the playoffs, I believe, still. So
I think I had them out, but I don't remember.
Like I had them in, but I had them wild card material, because I did think that there's 3 better teams than Tampa in the Atlantic Division, but they're there. I mean, I think what you're right about is that if Point's out for any extended period of time, there are going to be teams knocking on the door behind them.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, two that I can think of that if I'm not mistaken, haven't been in the playoffs in quite some time.
Buffalo has the longest playoff drought in North American
Yeah, but
sports.
I was also throwing out Ottawa.
Ottawa. Yeah, well, and even Detroit, who's
Detroit's had a
right
longer.
there as
Yeah,
far as points go. The
Detroit,
playoff droughts are strong.
but Detroit's start is not inspiring me as much. Like
Okay.
Ottawa's, I feel like it. Like Ottawa is they're like maybe they're turning the corner. Buffalo,
Yeah.
maybe they're turning because Buffalo started terrible. Buffalo started and we all
Claude,
immediately jumped and went, oh, it's going to continue.
Claude Giroux has turned back the clock a little bit in Ottawa. He has shown a little bit of flash this season.
I think he always was going to. That's the thing. Like
No, I
he's a
know.
really good player. You know,
But well, hopefully they're putting the pieces around him that he's not the only Flash. That's the problem. But
oh, no
regardless,
kidding. Yeah, no kidding. If you play with Brady Kachuk and Tim Stützle, yeah, it's nice,
right.
right?
Back to this Tampa game. So you did get, speaking of Flash, Owen Tippett. And again, 2 goals this week, bunch of chances on Saturday. I really like what I've seen out of Owen Tippett this week. I think listen, it's early enough in the season, and we'll get into this as we have a bigger conversation later in the show.
Right.
It's early enough in the season that if the ball is rolling for him, if he scores another goal or two this week, another goal or two next week, get that ball rolling, he can still end up in the 30s pretty comfortably.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's still one of those getting late early kind of things for him on
yeah,
that respect because you've played what are they up to now? I think that's 16 games,
something like
15
that.
games, 15
15.
games. But
You're only
like
5 or 6 away from a quarter of the
right,
season.
you're nearing the
Yeah.
quarter mark and he's not even at 5 yet. So like I kind of want to pump the brakes and like there's a difference between they played Carolina and Travis Konechny had 2 goals. And by the
Yeah.
time you come away from that game, he's at 7 and they've played 13 games, right? I'm like, well, he's getting to 30 then, because even if he goes 5 games without scoring a goal, all he has to do is come back with 2 games where he scores 3 and he's right back on track.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
he'll score his typical 30 goals, which is why he's not really part of the big picture problem here. Like I
No, I
know
agree.
there's a lot about like the contract and all stuff like that. He's never been part of the big picture problem because he's one of your spark plugs.
I agree. No, I agree. I think
But
as
when
far as
Tippett
your
goes cold and when Morgan Frost can't score a goal without it going off of his leg, and Joel Farabee can try and try and try, and it takes him until Saturday to finally get one. And then he has it. Think about it. Farabee had a chance for probably 2 more in that game on Saturday and couldn't finish.
the Flyers could have scored 5 or 6 goals in that game on Saturday easily,
With the
and they ended
scoring
up
chances,
it,
absolutely.
man, because there were some crazy opportunities in that game.
But this is exactly the thing that drives people crazy. Is I can mention Konechny's numbers until I'm blue in the face.
Mhm.
It's everybody else. It's the long cold streaks for Tippett with the goal scoring. It's every other guy that you can think of that I'm mentioning. When was the last time Forrester scored? When was the last time that, like for a while it was, how far back last season do we have to go to find Frost's last goal?
Bobby Brink's
Oh,
not scoring.
Even Sean
Uh,
Couturier to an extent. Sean Couturier, 1 game where he had the hat trick, nothing else every other game. So it's been what is that? 3 goals and scoring in 1 game out of your last, what is it, 40?
It's pretty tough.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people go nuts over that type of stuff. And I get it because you want to see some more consistency. Like it's starting to get past the point where like because Konechny's doing what Konechny does. You've got Michkov, which is, that's the conversation we're gonna have. Couturier has 8 points this season, which sounds nice, but when you factor in that 5 of them were in 1 game, it's not as nice.
Well, right, and the fact that they've played 15 games, that means he's on pace for about a half a point a game. Not
Right.
good enough.
Tippett's at 9, which is okay. Like he's picked it up a little bit lately. I think we can all agree on that. Farabee and Lawton are at 7. It's like you see what I'm saying though. Like now
Well,
we're getting into the territory though where it's a bunch of guys who are half a point a game. That's great.
I agree. Well, okay, so I think it's time. Okay, we're about 20 minutes into this show. We've teased around the edges.
Yeah, you want to get to it?
So Matvei Michkov is scratched on Thursday in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough of a surprise. They come out, they win. Other than a goalie switch, John Tortorella runs the same lineup back on Saturday, making Michkov a healthy scratch for 2 games in a row.
Right.
In case you weren't sure, Twitter wasn't very happy about this. And the media was upset too. It wasn't just the internet. This one caused a riot. This one caused a little bit of a firestorm.
I wouldn't call it the media being upset as much as it is that at that point in time, we have to form opinions.
Right, valid.
You know what I mean? We have to form opinions on why this is happening. And that was even split because you knew what you were getting on Thursday. And like I had to explain when I was on the station this week, we got to go back to last Thursday to start the timeline. Because last Thursday, he makes a mistake, 5-on-5, basically defensive zone, create turnover, creates a scoring chance. He gets sat down for a few shifts at even strength, plays his power play shift. Everybody else takes his place on even strength. Okay, fine. He comes back. He finishes out the game. Saturday was Saturday. Nothing really of note happened. It was kind of a boring game. They didn't have much offensive firepower. You get the drill. Tuesday in Carolina, he's playing again, and then we start to slowly see as the third period goes on, he's out there less and less again. It's happening again.
And we're talking about a game where you're down a couple of goals, attempting to come back, and then eventually a tie game.
Right. Well, and there's an element where and this is where this kind of starts, right? Because you want to make an example out of a game that's nothing in the first period. I think a lot of people understand that. In the third period, and this is John Tortorella, so that this is always possible. It's the final 6 minutes of the third period of a tie game. And now you're taking a player who has all the creativity in the world, all the skill in the world offensively, and sitting him down for what I can only imagine at that point has to do with we don't even have the puck. So forget about your creativity for a minute. We need all hands on deck defensively just to get it. And give ourselves even a chance. So you're going to have to play there. And if I'm not seeing it, you're getting sat down. Now, you can argue the other way, effective immediately, and go, how do you take one of your better skill guys, maybe your best skill guy, off the ice for the final 5 minutes plus of a game when you're tied in, that you when you're dying for a win? Exactly. How do you do that? So, but bottom line is that I don't think anybody ever really has a problem with in-game handling of that situation. What else are you supposed to do? Kind of like, if you're going to try to teach something in that moment and you don't want the same mistake made, sitting him down within the game is the only way to do it. It doesn't mean he didn't play. Like, you also at that point have 45 minutes of game time and whatever ice time he got that night, to sit there and say,
you have to trust your coach in that situation. You know
what else? With the exception of the very first one they had, they didn't score in the power play for the rest of the night. Like, if he had a power play chance to go out there and do something, it didn't happen there either. He ended up finishing that night with 13:57 of ice time. Near 14 minutes. That's, I know that's not the typical top 6 number, but it's not like it's awful.
It's not like he's playing your 6 or 7 fourth line minutes. Like,
right.
It's still real ice time.
By all accounts, by the way, if you go and look at every other forward on the roster, that's not I'll say with the exception of, because you can see where they started to double shift guys, because Couturier had 25 shifts, Tippett had 21, Farabee had 21, Konechny had 23. Everybody else, if you were just judging by the rest based on normal ice time or whatever, Scott Lawton played 16 minutes, so played basically 2 minutes more, right, in the game than Michkov did, and had 2 more shifts. It's basically like Michkov missed 2 rotations in that game, kind of. Grand scheme of things. Now, would he have been out there later? Sure. I can imagine that he would have been. But you look at the rest of his line, he had 1 shot on goal, he blocked a shot, and had 1 takeaway, and I guess the 1 face-off he took. That's it. It was kind of an uneventful game for him, all things considered. He had an assist earlier in the game, but that was right away. That was the first goal of the game on the power play. 5-on-5, he probably didn't give you a whole lot to work with. So they sat him down. That brings us to Thursday, because now once you get to Thursday, it's clearly possible at this point that this happens. You don't just go off of, well, he sat down in the first period of the 3 games ago and sat the rest of the third period last game, and it's not floated as an idea, that is possible. So, and more than anything, what I braced myself for more than anything from this was the fan reaction. Exactly that. Like, and kind of, to be honest, the fan reaction, but also kind of sitting here going, I understand why you're doing it as a teaching moment. What I don't understand is kind of why now, because you're picking him out of a lineup that, as far as I'm concerned, for the last 4 games, no one's been good at 5-on-5.
Well, is that the reason? Right? Can you kill 2 birds with 1 stone
You're
by
saying to spark the lineup.
giving him a chance to sit in the press box, which John Tortorella told us within the last week or so was going to happen, can be valuable to young players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So you give him a chance to watch in the press box. You also tell the rest of the team, hey, step it up. Nobody's safe. The Russian kid scratched. Because he's the
So
generational superstar. He's the kid that we're building everything around, and blah 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 blah. If he can ride Pine for 2 games, so can you, Morgan Frost. So can you, Bobby Brink. So can you, everybody in the lineup. I'm not singling those 2 players out.
So let me tell you where this is, not where this is going to go, but that's a great point you bring up, and this is the reason. That's probably the motive behind part of it. And
what did they do on Saturday? What did they do on Saturday? How many chances did they have on Saturday? We've talked about it 3 times already.
Just hold on.
That's an energized lineup.
That's probably the motive. I don't think using that as the motive works for more than a game, because then you're then you're getting personal about it. If anybody can be sat and you want to spark the lineup, then sit Michkov for a game, and then the next game sit Konechny and say, I'm not making it's not even him. I'm doing it because I want to see you play without him. He's one of the only ones that actually has energy. Play without him.
Well,
right. So if it's to spark the lineup, what they're going to tell, I'm telling you right now, and they're never going to.
They're never a little more complicated.
Yeah, but I know they're never going to say it. But I'm going to tell you right now, the reason it happened Saturday is because he's not going to change up a winning lineup. They won. I'm rewarding the lineup, and Michkov got another game out of it. And I would be shocked at this point if he doesn't play Monday.
Well, yeah, okay. I'll say what I said in the group text. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My general feelings about the situation here. When he gets 1 game, I'm fine with that. Like I said, I don't love it. Right? Like, just from a watching the game perspective, of course, I'd love to be watching the team with Matvei Michkov over the team that doesn't have Matvei Michkov on it. But we knew it was going to happen. John Tortorella told us it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you give him a chance to learn. You give him a chance to sit in the press box. You send a message to the rest of your roster. 1 game is fine.
Exactly.
Second game brings me some hesitation. Now, I don't love how John Tortorella handled the situation. I don't love sending Brad Shaw out to, talk to the media about the lineup pregame.
It's not even that he's out there to talk about the lineup, but I get your point.
Talk about the lineup when the question is, why isn't Matvei Michkov playing? Because for 2 games in a row, you sit him down.
What I don't like, and like what I don't like about that situation also is that, and I'm not talking about the second one, it's more the first one, because there's people out there who are going to sit there and go, why didn't anybody ask about what's going on with this? Why didn't anybody ask any tough questions? Where are the tough questions at, or whatever? They asked. Okay, I work around these people. I saw the video. They asked. You know what you got? You know what you got? It's part of the process. And that was it. And Tortorella said the same answer twice and then smiled afterwards like, nice try. You're not getting it out of me.
This is all you're getting. Yeah.
Right?
No, I know. And that's what I'm saying is I don't love how it was handled in the media. Right. Their media strategy for the situation was not great.
Well, no, I don't care about it on Thursday. I care about it like kind of beyond it. Like if it's part of the process and it was veering that way anyway, fine. You're giving him a game. You're making an example out of him more than anything, I guess. I don't know.
But I can even forgive the second game, right? I don't love it.
I'm
I
having
I,
I
I
have a
don't
hard
love it,
right.
but
I have one very easy reason why I have a hard time with it.
okay.
And I didn't even get to put the answer to the question in the group chat afterwards because I was trying to get all my work done and just finish, and I forgot to go look at it until well after the game because it's not, let me tell you right now, it's not a detail I use in any story because it's not if I'm just recapping a game, this detail does not matter to the game recap whatsoever. But I went and checked after the game on Thursday. Okay, so Michkov's not going to play. You want to sit him down, you want to use it as a teaching moment, whatever, right? I'm going to read you 3 players in reverse order for just for Thursday. And I get it. It was a 1-1 game. And actually really it was a 1-0 game for most of it. And where you were trailing, and then there's overtime involved, right? So ice times are going to be staggered a little bit. We're doing something new on the station where they got a sponsorship for 3 stars every game. So I have to pick my Flyers 3 stars every game. And when there's not a lot of goals to go around, I can't just go, well, this guy scored twice and this guy scored once, and that's the order, right? So I had to, from a 2-1 shootout win, I had 2 pretty easily. The goalie and Tippett had a great game, right? Scored tying goal. But I had to pick a third, and my third ended up being Travis Sanheim, because when I looked at the end of the night, Travis Sanheim on Thursday played 28-21.
Listen,
and had a really good game otherwise, right?
At some point in time, not today, but at some point in time, we're going to have a conversation about Travis Anheim on this show.
Maybe. So that's that's the huge chunk of ice time, right? And if I'm really laying into it further, Konechny and Couturier played over 23 minutes as forwards because overtime, you name it, right? So here's the 3 names. Noah Cates played 10:41. Not bad. It's kind of typical 3rd, 4th line material. That's not crazy, right? Garnet Hathaway played 9:59. Again, relatively normal for the role, right? Nick Delorier played 5 minutes 11 seconds of a 65-minute game.
7 shifts.
And
right now.
and okay, so that was 1 game. When they extend it 2 games for Michkov, and you're going to keep the rest of the forward line of the team. Like, actually, let's play it this way instead, because I'm bringing that part up. Even the guy who goes into the lineup, Anthony Richard, got called up. Now he's going to go in, right? He played 16 minutes against Tampa. Didn't look like he had that. He was on the ice for the goal against, but didn't have a bad game.
One thing you can notice on Thursday, although it did follow through to Saturday a little bit, was that Richard was plugged in pretty 1-for-1 from Michkov.
Right. Now, well, I think part of that had to do with power play time, and I think there was more in the Tampa game than there was in the Florida game, because all of a sudden I just went and checked it. In the Florida game, Richard only played 11-13.
It was a little less 1-for-1 in the Florida game for sure. Yeah.
See, I didn't look at all these. I didn't really look at all these ice times. So there's some interesting material in here. Now that I'm looking, because Richard dropped significantly, which maybe is to be expected. Like, let's be real about what he's been for most of his career.
Right.
He's been a quad A guy. He's definitely better than AHL material. He's one of those guys that like definitely deserves a shot when you need somebody. So I don't deny that at all.
He's Justin Bailey.
Yeah, actually, well, no, I don't want to go that far because I think he's got more scoring prowess at the NHL than Bailey ever did.
Yeah, but I think Bailey was probably a little bit better of a 2-way player.
Maybe.
Bailey was a solid little defensive. Anyway.
Okay. The point that I wanted to drive home more than anything
name a guy.
No, the point that I wanted to drive home more than anything, and you said what, 7 shifts for Delorier in Thursday's game?
Yep.
He got 11 shifts in this game and still only played 5 minutes 47 seconds. So I sit there at the end of the day and go, what's the importance of sitting Michkov for a second game when you put out a player who literally isn't playing 6 minutes a night?
Okay, but
how does that help? No.
Can it be argued that those minutes got distributed to other players who might not have gotten that time if Michkov was in that game?
I find it a little bit hard to argue about players getting distributed more minutes when the next lowest forward on the roster that night was not the 2 that I mentioned from Thursday by any stretch. Do you know who the next lowest forward was?
Go for it.
Morgan Frost with 9 minutes 30 seconds.
And some of that was
no,
punitive.
and only took 14 shifts. Now I'm going in and I'm actually like I wasn't I
You're
was using
we're diving in on it now.
well because I want to see what the time on ice said because I didn't realize he wasn't out there for a chunk of it. Like,
well, right, but looking at the same list because now I have it pulled up. Farabee plays 19 minutes, which is more than he had been playing.
Farabee
So
had a good enough game to deserve it. That's the thing.
that's where the minutes went. That's what I'm saying. So maybe okay, if you're looking at this as John Tortorella, as a bigger picture than a Thursday night game in Tampa and a Saturday night game in Florida. And you look at this and go, okay, I can give this kid a little bit of a break because, again, something else worth noting: Matvei Michkov has never played more than 50 games in a professional season. Physical break is not the worst thing on planet Earth for the kid. Now, I came on this show 2 weeks ago and said that I wanted him to play at least or maybe last week, and said that I wanted him to play at least 78 games this year, but I'm okay with him taking the occasional scratch. I don't love 2 in a row, but if John thinks that the kid's looking tired, right? You've been in the league a couple of weeks. The 5-on-5 play has started to slip a little over the last week or so. Maybe John thinks he needs a break. He's a rookie. He's 19, never played a huge professional season. And again, if you can use that as an opportunity to motivate your roster, to get some other guys some ice time, I'm not calling for John Tortorella's head. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I'm not trying to call for his head either per se. Okay, like
I don't think you are specifically.
No,
for
this
the record.
like this one decision is not me going. John Tortorella shouldn't be the coach then because
I agree. Right.
I don't love the second game at all because to me it makes more of an example out of the player at that point. Whether that's the intention or not, I don't care. It makes more of an example out of the player. Like based on the way that you're doing things, by the way, like so I found the time on ice report for Saturday. Morgan Frost played 4 shifts in the first period and did not play for the last 8:15 of the first period. Played the normal second period, which still only amounted to 3 minutes of ice time. Then in the third, played 4 shifts again and didn't play the final 8 minutes and 26 seconds. Never saw the ice in overtime.
So he played like he played fourth line center minutes in the second half of that game.
Now, based on that, would it shock you at all if he doesn't play Monday?
No.
Exactly.
I'm not surprised.
And somebody, Jordan Hall, I think, was the one who asked one of the questions in a press conference. It was before the road trip because they were still in Philly. And it was kind of the same situation. If they didn't have, who the hell was it? Like there was somebody who was dealing with something, so he didn't play. Like, it might have been before they called Richard up over Paling being out and like things like that. So like they didn't really have an extra forward, right? And something about Frost is being brought up, and like if the rope is getting shorter, and Tortorella did not hold back and kind of went, oh yeah, like as if to say, yup, like we're here again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it feels like Morgan Frost is a little bit of a pet project to John Tortorella at this point, and I can't tell if John Tortorella loves him and wants the best for him, or hates him and wants him off his hockey team.
It becomes harder to argue with a guy who's 26, who's been playing for 6 seasons
and has shown like the briefest flashes of that high skill ceiling that we theoretically know he has, but like has never really put it together at any sort of sustained level. Like, listen, I like Morgan Frost, but if this year is about an honest evaluation of the roster, who deserves to be on this team, if we're going to be a playoff team, if we're going to be a Stanley Cup caliber team, as of right now, on November 10th, 2024, up to this point in his career, Morgan Frost has not shown that. Not really.
No, not at all. And he's the type of guy where I think you're getting into the territory of he's an RFA at the end of this year again. Do you even qualify him if that's the case? Like at some point?
So I think if that's your plan, you try to move with the trade deadline.
You do what? Sorry?
You try to move him with the trade deadline.
You could, I guess. I mean,
a 4th round pick is better than not qualifying him.
Well, I get where you're coming from with that also because it's such a thin position.
Right. Like,
listen, I've tried to hold out for him, like in terms of, okay, Lutsenko made some noise to start the year, made the team, all that type of stuff.
and we all immediately penciled him in as the 2C.
Well, I'm saying,
Or at least a lot of people did.
I wasn't going that far with it in the early going. I think that that's what his ceiling could be if he's already passing as a 3C at 18. You know what I mean? Like if he played games where he clearly passed as a 3, maybe even extended minutes wise to 2, then he probably could have a ceiling of 2C. I don't think he's a 1C. I think if you're going to get a 1C, you're going to need to draft in the top 10 this year to try to get your hands on one of the 5 that may be capable of it, I would say. And it's like there really are. Like I think that there really are 3, 4, 5 guys that could be drafted that have that 1C potential.
Flyers end up stumbling, right? And we've talked about it a little bit here. We talked about the poor start. Since then, they're, I think, 4-4. If they right the ship and end up kind of working in the direction of last year's team, blah blah blah, I think that is still vaguely on the table. I think the time is running out for it.
You're right about that. You're right about the recent record, by the way. So they were 1-5-1, and now they're 5-8-2. So they've gone 4-3-1 in their last 8, which is not horrific.
Not horrific, right? So, but like we talked about on Wednesday morning, they had settled to the bottom of the league standings. So
right. After Tuesday, going 1-0-1 in your last 2 helped that a little.
That's true, quite a lot.
They were like going into that. They were 4. What was it? What would it be at that point? Then they were 4-8-1.
Be 3-3.
But they were 4-8-1 in 13 games, and it's like, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense.
Right. So
and for what it's worth, at the bottom of the standings too, they're competing with the exact same teams as always. Like San Jose, Montreal, Anaheim, Chicago, Columbus, and then like your shocker of the group is that Nashville's still hanging around down there.
I will say one team that has recently escaped that drudgery is Utah, because man, they're a fun team. And Arizona was down there every year.
Utah's come back to earth a little bit though too. Like
sure, but in the West, I think they're very much in it. But regardless, you have the Flyers in a bit of a no man's land at this point. Obviously, you're in a bad spot. If you continue along the track you're doing, if you end up kind of doing the free fall, we're actually in the bottom of the standings thing.
I don't think they're in no man's land though, because the bottom of the standings, I think, is like no man's land to me is finishing where I predicted, which is like 10th from the bottom. Right now they're 6th from the bottom, and there are teams behind them who have extra games where it's like
I'm looking at it a little bit longer track, and I think the team is much closer to the 4-3-1 team we've seen over the last 2 weeks than
which is where
than the 1-5-1 team over the first 2 weeks.
And that's exactly where I get like the 10th from the bottom finish. They're not good enough to be in the playoffs based off of that, but they're not going to finish it in,
right. So
with the third best lotto odds.
If they run the rest of the year at that kind of 4-3-1 pace, that to me is a no man's land kind of team. I assume if they keep running that pace, they'll kind of rise out of the bottom just enough to get a less than stellar draft.
Well, and it's going to depend on the honestly, it's a conversation. It depends on the night. I don't know. I still don't know based off of this with the backups, right? Like the backup goalies are the backup goalies. Fedotov had a great game. You want a game that maybe you didn't think you were going to win. He could go out there the very next time he plays and be the exact same guy we saw the rest of the season to this point. And then you lose the game. Or Kolosov's like that. Or
have we gotten an update on Kolosov, by the way? Because Fedotov, so Sam Ersson did return on Saturday. Ivan Fedotov did back him up. All of a sudden, having 3 goalies is a luxury, right?
Yeah.
Because Sam Ersson just missed a week, and it didn't really, obviously you had to play your, Kolosov, but you were probably going to play him at least one of those games anyway.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if Fedotov was going to get
Saturday.
Well, no. Here's here's my guess. If Ersson was good to go on Saturday, Ersson was getting Saturday. I think it was already kind of a determined thing after after last Saturday when he left that the next 2 are out. I think they were going to try to bridge the gap with Kolosov, and then Ersson back on Ersson back on Saturday. Maybe still Kolosov on Monday, just to give him a game against a team like San Jose for a change. Like, especially after you get, like, let's be realistic about Kolosov's technically 4 games, but like playing Montreal was playing Montreal. I get it. It was his very first game. He got thrown in against Boston, play Carolina, play Tampa. Let's give you San Jose to see if you can't win a game against a team like that, against guys who are basically your age. Like half the team is, right?
Half the team, right? No, I agree. Yeah, I think you might see. Yeah, but I don't know what you do now. Do you still run Fedotov on Monday? Do you let him run Thursday and then Monday?
I think part of it's going to depend on whatever the deal is with Kolosov. With Kolosov, I don't think it's serious. Whatever it is, I think it was just a
If
tweak.
he's ready, you think he plays?
No, I don't know at this point. Like, to be
Okay.
honest, at this point, I wonder if Ersson just gets the game because they want Ersson getting working.
They wanna
Ersson was
get
gonna,
him some
look,
rest,
if
yeah.
Ersson doesn't get hurt and plays the game out against Boston, I don't know who's playing against Carolina. It might have still been Kolosov anyway, just because it was, he hadn't played since the previous Sunday. It might have been. But then Ersson would have gone against Tampa and against Florida, probably. And then I still think there was an opportunity there to play Kolosov against, say, San Jose, because Ersson played 2 games, and then say Ersson gets Ottawa, Ersson gets Buffalo, Ersson gets Colorado. Maybe they try something different against Carolina at that point, or you circle the Chicago game.
Say at some point you got a 5-game home game stand in there. I don't want Ersson playing all of them.
Well, right, but you'd have to wait and see if that's the way they feel, because it's never going to be taken away, the fact that whether they, whoever the goalie is and whether it's his fault or not, it was never going to be taken away that John Tortorella is going to look for, how do I win the game? And right now, it's the same story as last season, where it's how do you win the game? Well, not playing one of those other 2 guys because they haven't been able to win. Now, maybe it changes your mind.
Change that on Thursday.
Well, right. Maybe that changes your mind. I mean, remember, that was the first game that they've won with a backup since March 2nd. And it wasn't, who was the backup?
Was that Fedotov? Oh, Sandstrom. Oh, man.
Fedotov had never won a game.
Victim of intent to injure Felix Sandstrom? Well, you saw the whole clip and stuff,
I did see that. That was kind of disgusting, honestly, because there's just no motive for it. Like, you can call it intent to injure penalty for a guy who charges in on goal while still, like, at least making a somewhat hockey play.
It was what, Ben Harper?
Yeah. That wasn't even a hockey play. That was just, I'm going to go into the net and take the guy out for no reason. The puck wasn't even there. It's behind the net. He just goes there to, like, try to he goes there like he's going to set up shop in front of the net, which is totally reasonable, and then just goes ahead and plows through him. Like, but whatever.
Let me take a look at something here real quick.
Sure.
Ben Harper, 198 career games in the show. What a winner. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Anyway, but if you're not getting it from the backups, like, nothing necessarily is going to change with that situation, right? Like you're still not gonna, I don't care who you're playing. Like, and it wasn't even Kolosov's fault, but Kolosov got the start against Montreal. So why do you lose to Montreal? It was another one of those games where you got a backup, and he gives up one that he should have, and then the other 3 are bad defensive plays.
Yeah.
But your defensive play is just as bad.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For the most part. Then you have a game where you put it all together, and Travis Sanheim looks great, and Nick Seeler has a really good game blocking shots, and Rasmus Ristolainen plays to the level that people think he can play, and you start to get one of those games. Like there was an element where, like, I get it, they gave up 3 goals against Florida. I feel like there were portions of that game defensively that were really good. Like, that's a night where, like, Rasmus Ristolainen was a +2. And I felt like during the course of that game, I'm like, you're playing well. You know who else played well after having a bad game earlier this week on Saturday? Emile Andre had a good game.
Emile Andre had a good game.
And got rewarded by playing nearly 20 minutes.
Yep.
Played more ice time than Jamie Drysdale did. By 2 seconds, but by 2 seconds. But
he stepped on the ice first.
But actually, in a way, you know what? By 2 seconds, but got one more and only got one more shift.
Oh, interesting.
So his shifts were longer, and And toward the end of it, Andre was playing top power play unit, not Drysdale.
And
And Andre was the guy they were throwing out there late in the third period of a tie game.
I think Neil Andre, and I said it on last week's show, I think he's done in Leon Valley, frankly.
I don't know that he is.
Close.
He should be. That's my answer. I don't know that he's done.
Sure.
But he should
be. If he shows up fat and out of shape next summer because he didn't, do any work in the off season, okay, send him to Lehigh Valley.
Oh
sure.
No, I mean for this year.
Perspective goes, he's an NHL player.
And I mean for this year. Like, I'm not talking about whether you show up in shape next year. I'm talking about for the rest of this year. You could make an argument that he will.
I was talking about just period.
Oh, I was talking about period too, but I'm saying you could make an argument that he goes back down because it's the easiest thing to do when York comes back, let's say. Tortorella already said that, like, we got to figure out what to do because he's earned it. So that's good. Like, they're seeing it, but it is the easiest thing to do right now. You know what I mean?
I get that, but no. I think he's
I'm
at worst
no,
defenseman.
I'm not disagreeing from the ability standpoint. He should be here.
Oh,
to me, since his call-up, he's had one bad game.
As far as I'm concerned, the only other move as far as I'm concerned, the only other move they should make this season with Emil Andre is a paper transaction so he's eligible to play in the AHL playoffs. That's all
fair.
I want.
Yeah, totally fair.
You're
saying at the deadline, you want him sent down on paper so that he's AHL playoff eligible.
All right, and they always do that. But no, I agree. I think he brings another stable pair of legs to this core, and I'm really curious to see what the core looks like when Cam York comes back. Like, if Emil Andre can keep a roster spot and Cam York comes back, I think you're getting close to the best roster that this Flyers organization can put together right now.
I'd have to see who they're not willing to, but who they're playing him with collectively. In the game, I guess, because like where this is going is that down the stretch in the third period against Florida, they were playing Andre with Sanheim.
I think Andre Sanheim makes a lot of sense.
It can. I still think that I'm saying where I'm coming from is more is the second half of what you're talking about, which is once York is back, because they do really like the York Sanheim pairing.
Yeah, but can you go York Drysdale?
I don't even think
York Drysdale.
I don't even think Drysdale's in your top 4 right now. That's how bad he's been.
Man, yeah, he's been poor. But
like, I'm either looking at a situation where like
you go York. Wait, here you go. You go what? York Sanheim, and then your bottom pair. Or not York Sanheim. York. Your top pair is Sanheim and Andre. Your second pair is York and Ristolainen. No, yeah, and then your third pair is Sealer and Drysdale. I think as far as the Philadelphia Flyers organization, right, because obviously Andre can go back down. Mm-hmm. As far as names available to you, that's pretty close to the best 6 you can get.
Here's the thing with where we're going with that, though. Okay. So what was the order that you did again? You did York Sanheim, and then you did Andre Ristolainen. Was what you did?
I did Sanheim Andre.
And then
my second pair was York Ristolainen.
So that's the way. Okay, so what I just said is how I would do it. Yeah. That's or at least that would be my guess, because I think they really like the York Sanheim pairing together. I think they would put you put Andre Ristolainen together, so you got the heavy hitter with the puck mover, and then and like the interesting part is that Drysdale being on the third pair is not ideal at all for what you're hoping he becomes. But what I will say is that I'm not even demoting Nick Sealer in that case. I'm sitting here saying Nick Sealer ends up exactly where I hope he would, because somebody else plays better. You know what I mean? Like, Sealer was playing top 4 because Andre was the new guy. Now, if Andre emerges and plays in the top 4, I put Sealer in the bottom pair every day of the week.
And you're thrilled.
Right. Even if it, like, without it being a demotion, it's not meant to be a demotion.
There were teams willing to trade a second-round pick to potentially put Nick Sealer on their third pair last year. Like, I mean, and maybe he would have been in the box, but you know what I mean.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that becomes an ideal situation for that. But, and So I don't know. I mean, we kind of veered away from the Michkov topic a little bit
We
here.
sure did, but it kind of got into a bigger roster conversation.
Well, it did, but like what I'm getting at is that like what we're pointing out is I get like what I think you're trying to point out more than anything is the positives of the lineup from the last 2 games because the process was a lot better. Like I was thinking this last night while watching the game as they get the game against Florida to overtime, of which if I'm not mistaken, and I don't hold me to this as fact, but I thought I had heard because Florida was on a 6-game winning streak coming in, and I believe what I had heard about that was all 6 were in regulation. So this is the first team that's taken the defending Stanley Cup champs beyond 60 in 7 games.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn impressive.
The Fire played 3 really competitive games this week.
Right, but I didn't like
said.
but I didn't like the process in the first game at all. To look ahead, like I looked at what they did in Carolina and looked ahead to Florida and went, "You're never getting out of that game. That game, you're getting the doors blown off you because they will score more, and they'll score even more than the 6 you ended up giving up by the end of it. You know what I mean?
Right, and instead, you almost ran Florida out of the building. Like we talked about 5 or 6 mixed chances, a couple of posts. Like
yeah, you had a lot.
Could have easily been lopsided. It could have been 5-2 Flyers,
right?
And I
think the point that I was coming from with it is that if you would have looked at those 3 games, I mean, we talked last week and pretty much wrote off the week, right? They'll be lucky. They'll be lucky to win a game. And to be honest, like I feel the same way you did. I came away watching the end of that Tuesday game in Carolina, kind of smiling a little bit from like, yeah, look what they did. They got it to the final minute and then they found a way to lose. That is the perfect tank but don't tank game.
And listen. I know you watch games with the analytical sports reporter eye. That was a fun game with Carolina. Like you may not love it as an analyst, but it was a fun game as a fan.
So you have that one. Then they go play Tampa hard, and they get that to a shootout, and they win the game. And it's like, okay, they ended up winning a game. It's a little bit of a surprise or whatever. To be honest, actually, what I looked at from that was winning a game like that. That was their 5th win of the season, and two of them were in shootouts. It's kind of fun. It's kind of funny to me.
Oh, how times have changed.
Right. And then even before the overtime started against Florida, I'm sitting there looking at that going, well, you got 2 points against Tampa. You were 30 seconds away from a point in Carolina. You got a point here. If they would have gotten the point in Carolina, that's a successful road trip. 4 out of 6. And what if they would have won that game? You know, for all the chances they had in overtime, what did they end up with in overtime? 7 shots on goal, I think, by the time it was over. And
that was a great overtime.
6. I stand corrected. Yeah. They had 6 shots on goal. I think no, they didn't hit the post in overtime. Florida did.
No, I think somebody hit like the outside of the net at one point, but
no, what you're thinking of, I think, is there was Joel Farabee had a chance that I thought for sure he was scoring on, and he put it wide.
Oh, you're right.
That was the second part. That was everything.
That was a really fun overtime.
Do you want me to tell you exactly what I tweeted afterwards? Because I think it sums it up perfectly. My tweet after that overtime was, file this one under games that don't deserve to end in a shootout. Can we get another 5 minutes of that? Holy smokes, what an OT.
Well, listen, there's a new CBA coming. And if that CBA
they'll never do it.
Even just making a 10-minute overtime.
Nope, they'll never.
I know they're never going to get rid of the shootout. I know.
In fairness to having a goaltender be an analyst for this team, Bush made a good point and said that, you know, the goalies would hate this for another 5 minutes.
Sure, but like,
yeah, but everybody else is like, who cares? Screw it. Screw the goalies.
Goalies hate a lot of stuff.
True. Anyway, yeah, it was an entertaining one and it was better. I just don't. What I don't like about the Michkov thing was, to me, it's back to something. I don't even know when I was going to bring it up or where it was going to come up or whatever, but I had told you a few weeks back, I think maybe it was a couple weeks back, that I had found the clip from the off season, that one of our off season shows where we talked about the possibilities of next season. And one of the ones I said was there was a real possibility of regression. And we kind of took that conversation and ran with that part of it. The other part of the conversation I had that day, though, as one of the possibilities was, what happens with John Tortorella if it's not a good start and he starts playing the same cards as like February and March of a season where you're contending? What happens? And I've noticed some of the same cards being played, and it does get tired after a certain point. And listen, you can talk about how it was motivation for the rest of the team. Like, look, I'll show the rest of you I'm willing to do this for 2 games. He's not going to be in your lineup. Do something about it. And if that's what sparks the team, then that's what sparks the team. I am not going to deny the fact that for the last 2 games, they've looked closer to the team of last season in the last 2 than they have at any point for the rest of this season. Hold for maybe the Minnesota game that they won, where they still gave up 5 goals anyway with their supposed number 1 in net. You know, Minnesota's kind of also just been that good to start the year too, and just had a game where they completely decided defense was optional. You know, Minnesota's what, the 3rd ranked team in the league?
Something like that.
Minnesota's got 2 regulation losses. One of them's here.
But I will also say, just regarding the last 2 games and how the team looked without Michkov, there is also something to be said for what have we talked about Michkov since he's gotten here? That he's incredibly creative. He's an excellent passer. He thinks the game's so far ahead of his teammates. Everyone else has to catch up to him. Like all of this stuff. Maybe for a short 2-game stretch, there's something to be said for allowing these guys to just turn that part of their brain off, right? That part that's thinking the Matvei Michkov part of the game. And I know it's probably not a huge deal for guys who aren't playing directly with him, but there's still an attitude when the whole team is revolving around one person, like this team has been with Michkov so far, that maybe removing him allows them to kind of get back to basics a little bit and play a little more free and not grip the stick so tight.
Maybe, and we'll see. But now you've got to test that theory with he's back. So now does it work?
Well,
and
we're hoping he's coming back with a jump.
That too. So it's because it's both. Now, when he goes back into the lineup, the 2 questions are: what does he look like, and how does the team look around him? Because like I saw 20 different numbers thrown from different directions during this whole discourse, right? Because there were people who were sitting there going, how do you look at his expected goals for? How do you scratch a guy like that? There were people who were saying by the eye test, his 5-on-5 hasn't been great. There were people who were saying this, that, you know what I mean? Like arguments for both sides coming at you. It kind of, and what that ultimately starts to turn into is a situation where it feels like no one's right, no one's wrong. Sitting a kid who's 19 years old for 2 games in a row to try to prove a point or something is not helping his development. 1 game, I'll level with you. 2, I don't think it helps his development. I don't care if you want to, I don't care if you want to do that 6 times over the course of the year and say once a month, I got to sit him just so he learns something. I don't care. Do it that way. But if you start to make a continuous habit out of it, it starts to become a pattern.
And I would like to see how he is deployed on Monday, right? And this will kind of lead us into the fact that he does get a little bit of an easier opponent on Monday too. So theoretically, he should get pumped for the ice time. I expect him to play 18 plus minutes. Or somewhere thereabouts.
And
if he comes back and he looks like he looked the first week or the first 2 weeks, or if what I'm saying, and I know I mentioned it here a couple of times, is I think the legs may have been a factor a little bit.
That's where I think it's noticeable. Like, I think it's noticeable in the legs. I think he's made some mistakes he's made mistakes at 5-on-5. I see it. I'm not trying to deny that one bit. Not trying to deny it one bit.
19-year-old offensive superstar. He's going to make mistakes in the defensive.
And guess what? And guess what? As much as I'm going to sit there and say, well, this might yes, as much as I can agree that might be the one reason people tune in sometimes is to see what this kid looks like, and it might have people tuning out. I'm going to tell you right now, they're not doing it for you. They're not playing him they're not playing him 82 in a rookie season. John Tortorella is not playing him 82 in the regular season because the fans want to see the kid. If he
doesn't think that's what's best.
Right. If he does not think that that's the answer, he's going to sit the kid down, whether you like it or not. Now, if that affects how you view the team and how you view the coach and how you view the game, that's on you. I'm not taking that part away from it. They were never going to do that. And
Kurtz knows best.
Debatable, always debatable. Look,
well, listen, if he comes back and lights the San Jose Sharks on fire on Monday night, then
sure,
we'll have the conversation.
Sure, and look, there was an element to me where I thought that the Carolina game started so in such an encouraging way because he got a point on the power play, and it's all right. After all those games, Konechny hadn't scored hadn't had a point in 3 games. Michkov had gone a few games without. I think it was 4 games without a point. It's all right, it's starting to come back around a little bit. You got your point back. This is making some sense again, right? And then another game where it's nothing's happening, and we're gonna start on the scratch train. Look, I don't know if it's good for his development or not. John Tortorella is going to say it's good for his development. The way I described this on the radio earlier this week was whether you want to hear that line or not, John Tortorella has been using that line forever. This is development 101 taught by John Tortorella.
Oh, nothing new.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand how it gets tired after a while. I understand it. I know that as a fan base, you're sitting here saying 2 things. One, I want to see the kid play anyway, and there's no better way to learn than by playing. That's what one part of it's going to be. And number 2 is going to be quit screwing around with this kid. This is the future of your franchise, and you're not above the team. You're the head coach of the team. You should be doing everything you can to make the team better, and I don't agree with your method of making a kid better by sitting him down.
Yeah, and on that particular point, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt to maybe the greatest American coach of all time. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say he's somebody else. Coach.
I have another American coach who comes to mind.
Listen, I said maybe he's in the conversation. At very minimum,
he is in the conversation. I will level with you there. I'm sorry, but there's an ex-Flyers coach who I would put in that argument.
Roger Nielsen. Oh, I'm kidding.
You know who it is. I want some jam in here. Let's go.
Who's American? Who are we talking about?
Peter Laviolette.
Oh, Laviolette. I completely forget.
Wow, forget that he's American. The jam reference went right over your head. Start playing with the jam in here.
So my brain with him always instantly goes Laviolette, Quebec. And he's not.
No,
I know he's not.
He's not.
But I hear the last name and I'm instantly just oh, that sounds French-ish, I guess. He must be from Quebec. No, but regardless, I'm willing to trust one of, if not the Mount Rushmore of American hockey coaches. Let's put it that way.
Did you love, by the way, because somebody put I think it was Bar Down, did a picture or did a post about, this is the guy who's scratching Michkov today, blah, blah, whatever. Have you seen the image that they made for him to go into the NHL 25?
It's so bad. So in case any of our listeners don't know,
go look at Bar Down.
The EA Sports NHL series just struck a deal with the coaches union to get coaches in the game.
Which, by the way, I think it's a great move. It's a great move.
Absolutely. I hate hiring Brad, whoever. They don't mean anything. I have John Tortorella. I have John Cooper. We have real coaches. Paul Maurice.
It's so funny to me how the 3 names you just mentioned are all terrible.
Oh, I know. I'm pretty sure
Paul Maurice looks terrible in it. John Cooper looks terrible in it.
I'm pretty sure what happened was that they struck a deal with the coaches union and immediately put guys in the game. Now, as time goes on, they can, and hopefully do, scan faces and add guys into the game and update character models and hopefully make it a little bit more realistic. Now, I know EA Studios that works on NHL is in Vancouver. So hopefully after teams make a trip through Vancouver, they drag the coaches in for face scans because the John Tortorella one is atrocious.
Yeah, but you know what? Do you want to know something funny though about that? There was an argument to be made, and it's a good argument, that they actually have how many? What's a safe number for me to go with? I'll say 8 ex-players that they probably have face scans of.
Oh, absolutely.
Ex-players.
Marty St. Louis looks atrocious.
Yes, and you have a face scan of Marty St. Louis from
6 years ago, not even that long ago.
Yeah, but by the way, back on the really quick on the footnote on the Lavi thing. Not only is like I know because you're right. Like you hear the name Laviolette and you start to think like totally different, right? Not
It
only
doesn't
is
sound
he
like an
American,
American name.
no, not only is he American, he's from basically close to the same area as John Tortorella is from. They're
Yeah,
both
they're
from
all from
Massachusetts.
Boston. Yeah. 80% of the people in USA hockey are either from Minnesota or Boston. Let's be honest.
Um,
You've seen Miracle. Come on.
it's changing a lot lately, actually.
I know it is.
It's
I know.
changing a lot lately. I mean, well, beyond that, actually, and by the way, you're missing another important state in that mix. By the way, there's a ton of hockey players who come out of Michigan.
Oh, there is. Yeah.
Michigan has a ton of hockey players, and
That's
then
true.
you start to like you stick with the New England states. Connecticut to a degree.
If you're from Connecticut, you're from Boston. If you're from New Hampshire,
But
you're from Boston. If you're from Maine, you're from Boston. Eh,
okay, so
they're all the same.
you're gonna lump Vermont into that too, I
Yeah.
guess.
At me, YWT on Twitter. Fight.
Whatever. I wasn't going that far with it, and more of what I was talking about was kind of a contingent of there have been more California products, there have been Florida products, there've
Absolutely.
been like it's
Arizona.
evolved a lot. I gotta give credit there where it's evolved a lot. And some guys like bounce around like they're born in this. I love that one. You get the guy who was born in Michigan, went to North Dakota or whatever.
And most of the time that was my dad's a hockey coach.
You're probably not wrong.
Tell me I'm wrong, right? Why were the Kachuk brothers born in Missouri? Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Come on.
All right. That doesn't help the Austin Matthews one though.
No. Speaking of the Kachuk brothers, we will see Brady Kachuk on Thursday.
Yeah, you got one on Saturday. You're getting the other one this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So, quick little update on the Flyer schedule this week. You have a home game Monday night against the San Jose Sharks. You're in Ottawa on Thursday, and then you are back at home on Saturday to start a 5-game homestand against the Buffalo Sabres.
So let me start with this. Because I'm going to give you. I'm going to try to give a reason.
It's a softer week than last week.
It definitely is. I'm going to try to give a reason as to why every single one of these games has a little element of intrigue behind it to an extent.
Yep.
So San Jose, if they decide to extend this Michkov thing any further, it's going to be. First of all, it's a really hard sell to begin with. Well, 3 games is a really hard sell to begin with, right? Like almost impossible. Like there were still people defending 2 games. 1 game was like, and then there were some people who were 1 game was fine, 2, like that's a little bit rough. Like I don't know what the point of that is.
I'm on the side of 2 is rough but acceptable, but just barely.
Right, and then there was plenty who just there were plenty who were past that point at 1. Obviously,
I agree. Yeah.
So 1, I think you need to play Michkov anyway just to get him back into the lineup. But 2, especially at home, yes, because that is one of the things, right? Like you got to acknowledge the fact that the 2 games that they played on the road without him are 2 games that have commonly in the past drawn decent Flyer crowds on the road because it's Florida. A lot of people retire and go to Florida and then say, hey, I'm going to the 1 game that they're here for.
And so you're probably not changing that just based on a lineup decision. Like if you're going, you probably made plans and bought the tickets months ago. So
well, yeah. But anyway. I'm saying it wasn't like it was a home game to a degree. Like there are a lot of fans that
there was a ton of cheers in Tampa. That was a Tampa, Flyer crowd in Tampa.
Tampa, I think it's starting to shift a little bit. Like there's still a playoff team, but. And that may have that may have had to do with the opponent too. That the Flyers are not exactly the most marquee matchup anymore. The Florida game,
the Lightning also haven't played a relevant regular season game in about 5 years.
The Florida game that used to be a virtual home game for the Flyers is no longer.
Yeah. Wow, because they're now on top of the mountain.
Team wins the Stanley Cup, you don't get tickets as easily anymore. My point is that was one of like the little things that was going on with it was like at least it's not a home game. Right? Like, at least it wasn't a home game where they sent him. So I got to imagine he plays. But if you weren't to play him anyway, you're also robbing people, generally speaking, of an absolute great rookie matchup.
Enough. Yeah. Celebrini.
I am telling you, I am spoiling it for people on this show. You don't have to go read it at this point. I hope you do, but you don't have to go read it. My 2 players to watch, assuming everything is the way we think it's going to be, is Michkov and Celebrini.
It has to be.
That's your matchup. That's your individual matchup. That's the 2 players. You got to watch them. right? And I could have picked a different rookie. I could have lumped Will Smith into that group and said you got another good rookie in the picture. But Celebrini's the first overall pick.
Are you going to do the cheeky thing on Thursday and make it Tippett and Giroux?
I could. Depends. Let me see what kind of game Tippett has on Monday, and I'll let you know. I mean, because Tippett was my pick on. Tippett was kind of ironically it worked out that way, but it became easy. You're right. Like play in Florida, former team, goals in 2 games in a row. That all adds up. He's the player. Well, it was going to be, to be honest, if we had any info before like 4 o'clock for that 6 o'clock game that Michkov was definitively playing, it would have been Michkov then.
Sure, absolutely.
It's
now it's, well, what does he do now?
Right. I don't know, I don't know that it's going to be Giroux per se. Usually I try to go with whoever the hot hand is. I'm going to hit the button early, even though there's another game involved. Yeah, right now it's probably Brady Tkachuk based on numbers, but that could change over time. The Giroux element is the fun part of it. I give you that. Ottawa's got a lot of stuff figured out, I think,
Sure.
So we'll see how that goes. And to a degree, like I'll be fully transparent with you. The Buffalo one, I was kind of dreading watching that in person earlier because Buffalo didn't look like it was off to a good start either, and now they're getting it back. They're getting it back on the rails. Who did they beat the other day that I was like really impressed with?
Did they beat the Rangers? Was that what it was?
Yeah, they smoked the Rangers 6-1.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, they torched
that was what it was. And and not to mention they've won 3 straight, and I would venture a guess to say it could very easily be at least 4 out of 5. They play Montreal on. Oh, that's a fun one. I didn't realize that was a game time. They play Montreal on Monday at 12:30.
Ooh, spicy.
That's kind of like on that's because it's Veterans Day. That's kind of like how the Flyers had played, and it had nothing to do with this because it wasn't in the States, but the Flyers played a game a couple of years ago on President's Day at like 4 in Calgary. So it didn't have anything to do with that per se. I think it was something else. I think there was another celebration of sorts in Canada.
The NHL celebrates holiday games so weird. So weird.
By the way, this is the only afternoon game on Monday. So it's a definitely an oddball, but like nonetheless. So but 3 more, 2 home games, and this starts the does this start a grind for me?
Absolutely, a lot of home games.
They're home for what? 7 of the next 9 or something.
Something crazy like that.
You already touched on that. You touched on there's a 5-game
homestand starting on Saturday.
Realistically, and then it's separated by a quick trip to Ottawa and the annual we don't play at home on the night before Thanksgiving because we play at home on Black Friday every year.
If you want to know who the players of the game are going to be for all those games, make sure you're following Kevin at Kevin_Durso, reading his pregame articles on
watching my pregame Instagram, pre and postgame Instagram reels.
Watch his pre and postgame Instagram reels.
Listen to 97.3 the day after games.
Listen to 97.3 the day after game. Listen to Flyers Files. Follow Kevin everywhere. Follow us at YWT Podcast. Find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. And I think that'll be enough for the plugs today. We're gonna go ahead and get out of there. Make sure you're following us everywhere. Subscribe, hit the like, all that happy stuff. Review us. We'll be back in we'll be back next week. And until then, stay